In our headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, August 8th, here in South Korea. Authorities are on high alert as Typhoon Khanun approaches the country from the south and is poised to bring with it strong winds and heavy rainfall, triggering fears of rampant flash floods and landslides. And in response to the potential danger posed by the approaching storm, the 25th World Scout Jamboree departs its base in Saemangeum for shelter elsewhere starting Tuesday morning. Meanwhile, Korea posts a current account surplus in the month of June for the second straight month as the country's imports retreat further than its exports. We begin with news of an approaching typhoon that has authorities here on high alert amid the tragic losses of lives and rampant property damage encountered during the torrential downpours last month. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off with the forecast for this week.
Packing winds as fast as 44 meters per second, Typhoon Khanun is now expected to hit South Korea's southeastern region later this week. According to the Korea Meteorological Administration on Monday, the typhoon is set to arrive 90 kilometers southwest of Busan on Thursday. The agency warned that once it arrives on the Korean peninsula, the winds will be strong enough to derail a running train. After arriving the country's southeast, the typhoon is then expected to advance northward, making its way up the Korean peninsula. The weather agency also forecast that the typhoon could heavily impact Gangwon province, which may see up to 400 millimeters of rain, while other affected regions might see between 50 and 200 millimeters of precipitation. In response, the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters raised its disaster readiness alert level up a notch to level 2 from level 1 as of 6 p.m. Monday. According to Interior Minister Lee Sang-min, the government will aim to dedicate its administrative power to preventing casualties by restricting access to areas prone to disasters, such as mountains, underpasses, and old reservoir zones. The high alert comes as the recent monsoon season here in the country resulted in a number of casualties, including at an underpass near the city of Cheongju, where over a dozen people were killed when a riverbank collapsed and flooded the underpass. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And in response to Typhoon Khanun, the 25th World Scout Jamboree has opted for an early departure from its camping ground in Saemangeum, Jeollabuk-do province, in search of shelter from the coming storm following a number of earlier challenges. My colleague Choi Soo-young has the latest.
The South Korean government and the World Organization of the Scout Movement decided that, starting from Tuesday morning, all participants still at the Saemangeum campsite for the World Scout Jamboree would leave the site. The government stated that this decision was made to ensure the safety of the participants as Typhoon Khanun is heading towards South Korea. Also, South Korean government announced that they will activate their contingency plan for the departure and accommodation for the participants. Some countries, such as the United Kingdom and the United States, had already left the campsite over the weekend.
The departure will be carried out sequentially starting from 10 a.m. The total number of individuals is around 36,000 from 156 countries, and more than 1,000 buses are expected to be mobilized.
Inadequate preparation was evident from the Jamboree start on August 1st. Heavy July rain flooded the Saemangeum site, forcing participants to set up their tents on top of plastic pallets. A heat wave then led more than 400 heat-related illnesses on day one. Hygiene problems like insufficient toilets and cleaning staff also emerged. The committee in charge of the Jamboree stopped some outdoor activities to tackle ongoing issues, but matters worsened. The government then assigned an emergency budget of approximately $5.2 million. Among its several companies, they provided supplies to prevent heat-related illnesses. On Saturday, August 5th, the UK, with over 4,400 members, left Saemangeum early due to safety concerns, and the US followed. The K-pop concert was also postponed to August 11th due to the heat wave. And there was an incident involving an unauthorized entry into women's shower rooms. On August 7th, as Typhoon Khanun's path switched toward the Korean peninsula, concerns grew for the Saemangeum campsite in Jeollabuk-do province. For safety, the World Scout Organization and the government approved an early departure. The scouts were unable to finish their planned activities in Saemangeum and will spend the rest of their trip in other parts of the country. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
Right, so the exodus from Saemangeum has begun, and now the interest is where are the scouts headed and what activities have been planned for the remainder of their stay here. Our Shin Se-byuk has some answers.
Jamboree scouts may be leaving early, but programs will still continue.
We are setting up accommodations in the Seoul metropolitan area and seeking to partner with local authorities to combine their existing tourism and education activities so that the Jamboree can continue.
According to the government, accommodation for all participants has been secured and assigned. These facilities are mostly concentrated in the Seoul metropolitan area and Chungcheongdo province. The government has looked for lodging options that could accommodate a large number of people, considering the nature of the Jamboree, which features group participation. Factors such as providing convenience for group activities, meals, and shower facilities were taken into account as well. Officials are also gearing up to offer a diverse range of cultural experience programs for the scouts. The Cultural Heritage Administration plans to open up national palaces across the country for free. Seoul City is also planning to change the schedule of existing summer festivals and curate special programs tailored to Jamboree participants. Also, the Culture Ministry will offer various programs at major museums, including the National Museum of Korea and the National Folk Museum of Korea. The ministry, together with the Korea Tourism Organization, has arranged to assist Jamboree participants who wish to travel around South Korea even after the official program ends. It will provide accommodation in university dormitories for nearly 3,000 participants from 8 countries, including Belgium and Canada. The K-pop concert for the Jamboree is also set for a venue change.
We're considering the World Cup Stadium in Mapogu District, Western Seoul, as another alternative.
Major companies such as Samsung, SK, and Hyundai have also joined in to offer guided tours of their premises. Samsung Electronics will run a tour program of its chip factories in Gyeonggi-do province. Hyundai Motor also plans to offer a tour of its factory for scouts from the Netherlands, Japan, and Malaysia. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
And President Yoon Suk-yeol has cut his annual holiday short by a day and returned to his office in Yongsan on this Tuesday. Now he's set to preside over a meeting with senior officials as Korea braces for Typhoon Khanun and seeks to shelter scouts of the 25th Jamboree from the storm and to prevent weather-related accidents among the broader public as the typhoon looks to make landfall starting Wednesday. Now, President Yoon had earlier called on Prime Minister Han Duck-soo to put in place a pan-government team starting today to coordinate transportation, lodging and cultural activities for the visiting scouts. Meanwhile, the cabinet reshuffle that had been anticipated for this week looks to be postponed. The U.S. has reiterated its condemnation of North Korea's hostile weapons activities and has reaffirmed its commitment to dialogue with the regime. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller on Monday local time also shared concerns over growing military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow, adding that Washington will continue to enforce all existing sanctions on the two countries. The remarks follow last month's visit to Pyongyang by Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu to partake in the regime's celebration of the armistice that halted active combat on the Korean peninsula. On the local economic front, Korea's current account remained in the black for the second month in a row in June as imports dropped deeper than exports. Our correspondent Shin Ha-young covers the latest findings.
South Korea's current account was in the black again in June. Preliminary data released by the Bank of Korea on Tuesday shows the country posted a current account surplus of $5.87 billion. This is the second straight month that a surplus was recorded, and it was even greater than in the month before. The surplus growth comes on the back of wider gains in trade and investment. The goods balance, which tracks the imports and exports, saw a surplus of $3.98 billion in June, recording a surplus for the third consecutive month. The country exported around $54 billion worth of goods, an on-year decrease of 9.3%, plunging for the 10th month in a row. By category, shipments of chips, petroleum products, and industrial chemical products slipped, while auto exports rose by over 60% from the previous year. On the other hand, the drop in imports was greater than that of exports as the cost of importing raw materials dropped due to lower energy prices. A rise in dividend income from Korean subsidiaries located overseas also contributed to the current account surplus. Meanwhile, the deficit in the service account, which tracks earnings and spending on overseas trips and transport, came to around $2.6 billion as more people traveled abroad. The accumulated account balance for the first half of this year is in the black by some $2.4 billion.
Even under challenging external conditions, the fact that the trade balance has maintained a surplus in the first half of a year for 12 years in a row holds significance. Unlike the initial projections of a deficit in the first half of this year, the country performed well.
Regarding the outlook for the current account in the second half of 2023, the experts said that it's difficult to forecast due to the uncertainties such as global oil prices, the pace of economic recovery in major countries, including China, and recovery in the IT industry. 신하영, Arirang News.
Back here on the local front again, the average female worker earns about 60% of what is earned by her male counterpart here in the country. According to the data from 2021 released by the National Tax Service on this Tuesday, female workers were paid nearly 20 million Korean won or $15,000 less than male workers each year. The average annual per capita income for women was around $22,000 and for men some $37,000. While the wage ratio females to males improved about 2 percentage points compared to 5 years ago, data by the OECD in December 2021 showed South Korea's gender wage gap standing at the top among OECD members. Samsung Electronics held on to its lead in the global market by selling over 50 million smartphones in the second quarter of this year. According to global tech research firm Counterpoint, Samsung devices outsold their Apple counterparts by 3 percentage points during that period. However, Counterpoint also noted that Apple recorded operating profits of over $11 billion, 7 times more than Samsung did, amid the higher average selling price of Apple smartphones. Pundits believe Samsung may be betting on higher profit ratios after the release of its latest premium phones on August 11th. Telecom companies here are expanding their services to include pet rearing assistance via smart technology. Our Chung Woo-ju tells us what this means.
Food comes out of the automatic feeder when the dog approaches. The AI provides the appropriate amount of food by checking how active the dog was through a device attached to the dog's neck. The device can also determine the dog's location in real time.
Not many people think about connecting communication products with raising a pet, but now it's possible to manage the pet's health through a mobile phone subscription.
Another telecommunications company launched a platform last July that provides dog training services. Dog owners can analyze their dog's personality and connect with a suitable professional trainer. 280,000 people signed up in 1 year.
Our customer satisfaction rate almost always exceeds 9.5 points after training. The satisfaction level is very high, and recommendation points also surpass 9.5.
There are also telecommunications companies that have released products that help veterinary imaging diagnosis. When X-rays are taken and uploaded at the animal clinic, an AI delivers results in real time. More than 200 veterinary hospitals nationwide are using the service.
It takes about a day when remote reading is requested, but with AI reading, results can be received within a very short time of 30 seconds and used for treatment.
Experts assume that telecommunications companies are looking for new revenue models as the industry is already saturated.
Many customers are leaving with the appearance of affordable phones, and the demographic structure is changing with the younger generation population decreasing. So a breakthrough is needed for low growth, and various attempts are being made in the process.
The size of the pet-related market is expected to grow further in various areas. Chung Woo-ju, Arirang News.
Health authorities here have postponed plans to lower their classification for COVID-19 amid a tangible rebound in recent weeks. The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency had planned to downgrade the infectious disease classification for COVID-19 from level 2 to level 4, the lowest designation and equal to that for influenza. A level 4 designation would have lifted the remaining mask-wearing mandate at medical facilities, and COVID-19 patients would no longer require monitoring by the government. Korea has been posting a daily average of over 50,000 COVID-19 infections in the past week, which is expected to surpass 70,000 in mid-August. News of random knife assaults targeting the public at large here has reignited interest in the country's medical care for those suffering from psychological disorders, and the latest data available shares some disturbing findings. Our Yoon reports.
The recent spate of stabbings in South Korea has drawn criticism over the lack of care and services available for people with severe mental illnesses. However, the government has mental health welfare centers at 260 locations nationwide tasked with dealing with serious mental illness in communities. According to a Ministry of Health and Welfare report on Tuesday, as of 2021, only 1 out of 8 people that have visited a mental care clinic for schizophrenia use these government-provided mental care facilities. The same report showed only 0.05% of patients with bipolar disease were registered at these centers, dropping to 0.01% of patients with depression. The government has also been operating welfare facilities for basic mental health at 244 locations across the country. These centers provide personalized care like home visits, phone consultations, and mental therapy for patients with mental disorders that have been released from hospitals or have quit outpatient treatment. Contrary to growing opinion regarding the lack of available services, the issue is inadequate publicity for the existence of these facilities. Patients with serious mental illness are advised to take advantage of these services when being discharged from hospitals, but many don't think they need additional care, and hospitals cannot legally register patients at local community welfare centers without the patient's consent. In order to prevent further incidents like the recent stabbing attacks, awareness of mental illnesses and the presence of these mental health care facilities is crucial. Yoon, Arirang News.
BTS member Suga is poised to enlist, having cancelled an earlier request to delay his mandatory military service. According to his agency, Big Hit Music, this past Monday, he is now awaiting his enlistment notice. Suga is set to become the third member of his team to enlist, following Jin and J-Hope. Now, Jin began his service back in December, while J-Hope joined in April. Here in South Korea, all able-bodied men are required to enlist for 18 to 21 months, depending on the branch.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Ukraine, at least 5 people have been killed and over 30 injured after Russian missiles struck the eastern city of Pokrovsk. Rescuers are searching for those trapped beneath rubble. According to local officials, Russia launched 2 missile attacks on Monday local time, striking a hotel, residential buildings, and other civilian structures. The first attack killed 4 civilians, and the second killed 1 emergency official. The strikes come a day after Ukraine launched airstrikes, damaging 2 road bridges linking mainland-occupied Ukraine to Crimea. And 2 days after a wave of Russian missile and drone attacks on Ukraine killed 6 people and destroyed a blood transfusion center in Kupiansk. In Slovenia, at least 6 people have died and hundreds have been left homeless amid flooding that has been called the worst natural disaster to ever hit the country. The flooding started over the weekend, submerging villages, washing away roads, and causing $550 million of damage. It came after a month's worth of rain fell in less than a day. In response, the European Union and NATO have begun sending aid to Slovenia. The heavy rains also hit Austria, where 1 woman died after falling into a river in the southern village of Zollfeld. Austria also reported over 360 landslides. Croatia, meanwhile, has declared a state of emergency in parts of the country where roads, settlements, and fields are submerged. England have advanced to the quarter-finals of the 2023 Women's World Cup after beating Nigeria 4-2 on penalties following a goalless draw. The European champions faced a tough battle against Nigeria in Brisbane on Monday, which was made tougher after England forward Lauren James was sent off for stepping on a Nigerian defender. But the Lionesses held on to take the match to a penalty shootout, where 4 successful spot kicks saw them move on to the next round. Australia also made it through to the quarter-finals after beating Denmark 2-0 in Sydney. England will face the winner of the match between Colombia and Jamaica, and Australia will square off against the winner of France against Morocco. And finally, director of the movies The Exorcist and The French Connection, William Friedkin, has died at the age of 87. According to his wife, the award-winning director died at his home in Los Angeles on Monday due to heart failure and pneumonia. His death comes just weeks before the release of his latest movie, The Caine Mutiny Court-Martial. The legal drama is scheduled to premiere at the 80th Venice International Film Festival, which starts at the end of August. Friedkin began his career in the 1960s. His 1971 crime thriller, The French Connection, won 5 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director. Horror classic The Exorcist, released 2 years later, won Best Screenplay and Best Sound. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. It's 입추 today, the beginning of autumn on the seasonal calendar, but temperatures continue to sizzle with Seoul enduring a 9th consecutive tropical night. Afternoon highs are going up similar to yesterday, hovering around 35 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, heavy passing rain is in the forecast for southwestern regions, along with thunder and lightning. East of Gangwon-do province will see 60 millimeters more rainfall. Tropical storm Khanun is moving slowly over waters of Kagoshima Prefecture in Japan, and by early Thursday will strike Korea's south coast before traveling up the peninsula to North Korea. Bands of active rain clouds will develop along with violent winds and high waves around the Korean peninsula and will start to feel the effect as early as tomorrow. So those taking a summer vacation need to remain on high alert. Typhoon Khanun, meanwhile, will bring much awaited heat relief to the country. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions. Well, those are the headlines at this hour, but we have our panel session coming up right after this break, so do stay with us.